All right, what up, everyone? John Mosales here. It's a Fantasy NFL Today show. We're a week away from the NFL draft, so I guess I got my draft expert here, Patrick Leary. We're going to break down, some of the potential landing spots, rank some of the prospects, talk about the draft, big picture. We're just going to keep go wherever it goes. Patrick, what's shaking?
Hey, not much. Excited to talk some draft because I've been in the weeds on trying to prep for some fantasy stuff and everything, and we're almost there. So I'm excited to get going.
Yeah, so we'll pretty much focus on more of the skill position guys here, but we'll talk about, a little bit of everything. But so where would you rank this draft for skill play guys, out of 10 and then based on like the last few drafts we've had?
Yeah, so I would say overall a little lower than average. So maybe like a 4 or 5 overall from like a talent standpoint. But the big thing is it's like a 9, 10 blinking green light for running backs. It's the best running back class, maybe like ever from a modern perspective. There are a couple of really good ones, like 5 to 10 years ago that it could stack up against, but it's an insane group of running backs that it's not only got a couple up top that could be, the guys that you're talking about as the top 10 dynasty running backs for the next like 5 years, but it's got like 15 to 20 guys that are going to be solid contributors long term, or guys that you're talking about, 3, 4 years down the road. And I think the biggest thing from that perspective is it could do a lot to disrupt the landscape with veteran running backs. Like if there are some veteran guys that are holding on to jobs or roles in some of these offenses, these rookies are going to come in and cause a lot of chaos for the established order.
Wow. Okay, that's going to be crazy because last year, right, rookie wide receivers took over. The last couple of years, that's been the trend,
Yeah.
right? Brian Thomas Jr., with Malik Neighbors, Lad McConkey, Marvin Harrison Jr. But rookie running backs, I think it was just Bucky Irving that was good.
Yeah,
Right?
it's really the inverse this year because we had an amazing quarterback class, an amazing wide receiver class, and the best tight end to come into the NFL in quite some time as rookies last year. But a really terrible running back class. Number one was Brooks, and he was hurt, and he's hurt again, and he might be total dusted as a dynasty asset because he's not going to play at all this next year. But it's the total opposite. It's a weaker wide receiver class, a much weaker quarterback class, some good tight ends, but obviously no one on the level of a Bowers. And then the running back class is just the absolute opposite. It's way better than the year before.
That's it's cool. I guess it's going to be crazy for like just for redrafts. I mean, the whole kind of strategy is going to change. You might go. It might be everyone talking about zero RB, and you just draft 4 rookie running backs, right? Try and survive, and then if they hit late, but because it's also guys in the 6th, 7th round, or however many rounds there are.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy. So, but that's QBs. QBs are that's the golden ticket. Cam Ward, right? He's going one overall, no matter what, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
he'll be going 1 overall to the Titans almost definitely.
Let's say he was in last year's QB draft. Where would he have gone?
That's a question that people throw around a lot that I've heard a ton. I think he pretty much would have gone after. He might have gone before Penix, and that's about it. Like, I think, especially given now it's tough with Knicks, because I think a lot of people were doubters of Knicks when the Broncos took him that high. But obviously, he's proved out that he's quite an NFL player and that he's going to hang on to that job for a significant period of time. I think he would go 5th or 6th, maybe even after Penix, but probably not. Penix was super flawed as a prospect, even though had a great season. So I'd say 5th or 6th, and Shadur, who's obviously number 2 in this class, would have gone after all of them.
Okay, and so the rank, there's pretty much 4 good QBs in this draft. Are they the way they're drafted is kind of how you draft them for fantasy this year, or does someone
Yes.
get a bigger bump?
Yeah, no, I agree. The only one that you could maybe talk yourself into is in terms of being higher than where they go in the draft would be Jalen Milroe, because he has essentially like running back level athletic traits. And so were he to figure out the quarterback thing in the NFL, he would be massively valuable. So as like a flyer, you could see him depend, like if Dart doesn't get Jackson Dart from Ole Miss doesn't get a clear runway to a job. I would probably rather have Milrow in a backup situation over Dart in like a true backup situation, just because Milrow's ceiling as a rusher for a fantasy player is much higher. If he Milrow is in a lot of ways similar to Anthony Richardson in that it was like, okay, well, if he can figure out how to pass, the rushing is just going to be like exceptional. Unfortunately, as we've seen, Anthony Richardson really is struggling as a dynasty asset right now because he has not figured out how to do the passing thing. And he also is like the culture in Indianapolis is pushing against him and kind of like there's some significant concerns about whether he can hold on to that job beyond this next upcoming year. So Milrow is a lot similar in that way, but Ward is going to go number one overall. He's going to go number one overall in your fantasy drafts. Shadur will either go closer to Ward. He's going to go number one among quarterbacks. He's not going to go number one overall in fantasy drafts. But Shadur is a little closer depending on where his landing spot is. So as long as he goes in the first round, he's probably clearly number two. If he goes in the top 10, he's definitely clearly number two. If he falls to like the Steelers, that's compelling. Steelers pick, I believe, is 21. That's compelling because he would have a path to a job. That's one of the only open jobs right now. But if he doesn't go in the top 10 and he doesn't fall to the Steelers, then he's probably going to be quite a ways below Ward, where he ends up being, and more down towards Dart, who's probably number 3 right now, depending on how the landing spots shake out. So that's the main 4.
But so fit's important too, right? Because it's kind of like in the NBA. The further you slide, the better opportunity you have because the team's better, right? Sure. So like if like for fantasy, if Schroeder went to the Steelers and he had DK and George Pickens and their O-line's improved, right? Wouldn't you maybe rather have him in fantasy rather than Cam Ward in Tennessee with just Calvin Ridley?
I don't think I would put Shadur over Cam Ward just because Shadur's fantasy. Cam Ward has more like dynamic fantasy potential. Shadur doesn't really run that much. He's a really tough player, but he's not a super explosive athlete. So his upside in that way is a bit limited. But I mean, if he goes to the Steelers, that's a great situation for him, I think. And I would say that would be the one thing that if he does slide, that would combat the slide very well.
And it's all about everyone's always chasing the new hot thing, right? Like Jaden Daniels last year, everyone knew he had the talent, the two-way threat, but I think I got him 7th, 8th round in drafts, and he pretty much was a league winner.
Yeah.
So who's the best running quarterback in the draft? And then in comps, who's Cam Ward comp and who's Schroeder's comp?
So Milrow by far is the best running quarterback in the draft. Okay. Oh yeah. I mean, he's an insane athlete. Like but the problem is he's not good enough at quarterback to be on the field. So if he can get into a situation like if he'll probably go in the second round, I would guess. Interestingly, he got invited to the draft, which is so strange. So he's going to be like in the green room, and I don't think there's really anyone who thinks he's going to go in the first round. So that's like an interesting dynamic of like, wait, did he get invited to the draft because someone will take him in the first round or someone's going to trade up for him? If he goes in the first round, like he's not going to start right away, but his upside, he's such an interesting flyer in that regard. So he's by far the best rusher in the draft. The comp I keep seeing with Cam Ward now, he's about to be the number 1 pick. A bunch of people are throwing out like he has like Louis Riddick was on ESPN the other day saying like he has like I see Patrick Mahomes when I watch him play, and it's like I don't know, man. Let's be easy there. Jordan Love is one that I saw because Jordan Love, athlete but not a scrambler, not like an active sort of runner, like really good kind of dynamic passer. And what I like about Ward is that the Titans seemed to run their offseason, where they invested a ton in offensive line, which was a huge problem for them, and got Will Levis killed half the year last year. And so I think that the situation for him is really sort of supportive, and that they're building around. So I tend to think that Ward is really safe, similar to, like, you would say, like a Jordan Love has been like a very solid, since he got that job, like a very safe contributor with some upside. Jordan Love was probably like eighth or ninth QB off the board in redraft last year. Like that kind of vibe with Cam Ward. Plus, he's like a really highlight playmaker. Can throw a lot of picks at times in certain situations, but you watch him in the pocket, the way his escapability is awesome. So like that kind of vibe with him, which I like a lot. Shedeur is much more like vanilla than you would expect, I guess, is kind of what I think. Geno Smith is one that comes up for him a decent amount.
Jameis?
Doesn't have like the arm for Jameis. Like, Jameis is just, Chuck. And Jameis, obviously, Jameis has become a lot different than Jameis was when he came out of college. Like, Jameis was super hyped out of college. He
Yeah.
kind of had to cool off for a while, and he's gotten this like mostly positive gunslinger reputation. Like, I don't know how good of an actual NFL quarterback he is, but he's a fantasy darling because he will inject life into your wide receiver core. I mean, the
Oh my God.
Jerry
Yeah.
Jeudy renaissance last year was one to behold. I mean, Cedric Tillman was like a third or fourth round rookie pick, and then had injuries and whatever, and totally fell off the map, and then just like injected life into his stock for 4 weeks. So I actually have a Cedric Tillman that I'm holding on to, hoping that situation improves. But anyway, Shedeur. I think he's more vanilla than you would expect, given that he's Deion Sanders' son, and has like a lot of that Colorado team has a lot of hype around it. He's just a really like tough, like competitive quarterback, more than he has any sort of like standout arm strength or athleticism, or his accuracy is solid, but he's kind of more like a Geno Smith type, where it might take him a while, and he doesn't have like the super dynamic upside of the kind of quarterbacks that you want in fantasy. So if he lands in a spot where he's got a good landing spot, he's got good infrastructure around him, he would be a really solid like long-term starter in the league. But he's not going to be a guy I don't think you're ever going to have as like a top 5 fantasy quarterback in redraft, because he's just not going to give you that kind of upside.
Okay. I was thinking do the black and white thing. Matt Stafford?
I've heard that one. I think potential to develop into something like that. Like a really solid pocket passing quarterback like Matt Stafford. I think could be, there's potential there. He's got to land in a good spot, I think, because obviously I think um, the Dion factor is very interesting. Like, he could. I am impressed though by how little it's seeming like he's kind of been involved in the process for Shedeur. It feels like Shedeur is kind of just it's under the radar enough to where I think if he gets the right landing spot, maybe he gets a job right away. Maybe he develops under a quarterback like Stafford if he were to get drafted by the Rams potentially. There'd be good potential for him, I think, for sure.
Yeah, we'll move on. But also, Dion's such a big figure. What if Schroeder gets drafted? He's a backup, but maybe it's the Saints and Carr is starting, but Sanders is saying my guy's better than Carr, and the locker room split, and anything could happen.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like Dion could take over as the coach at some point or something too. Like, that's people were talking about that with Dallas
Oh my
potentially
God.
for a little bit. Like, now he won't go to Dallas now because of who did Dallas bring in as Dak's backup? Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on it. But he won't go to Dallas now. But yeah, it's a interesting one to watch too. He's gonna have a fascinating career, because I think he's like much more vanilla than everything around him would suggest.
Okay, so let's move on to we got the Pandora's box, right?
Yeah.
Oh, oh my God, I'm blanking. We were just talking about him on Schroeder's teammate.
Travis Hunter.
Yeah, Travis Hunter. I don't know why that happened.
Yeah, no, I kind of knew where you were going.
Because we haven't seen this before, right? Cornerback, he's playing cornerback, wide receiver. He's great at both, but cornerback.
Oh no.
Oops, I got kicked out of my own podcast.
No worries.
Yeah, weird. So maybe they'll play both, but that'd be a nightmare, right? If he's got like a less than 50% snap share, if he's only playing passing downs, that might be better for the team to win. But for fantasy, like, do you do best ball?
I don't do best ball as much. I do a little bit of best ball, but I probably want to do more of it this year, as I would say. But yeah, good best ball pick, probably just because.
Is he though? Because you don't know if he's going to even play wide receiver.
Well, I would say like he'd be a guy that if you don't have to set him into the lineup, you could take advantage of some of his boom weeks without having to worry about some of the weeks where he doesn't play wide receiver as much. I think the indication in Cleveland though is that he will likely play more wide receiver than, and I don't want to say more wide receiver than cornerback, but more wide receiver than if he had gone to some of the other places. Yeah.
Like the Giants. I mean, you got Malik.
Yeah.
I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson's not that great, right? The Pats don't have anyone. I would think Cleveland's almost deeper, but maybe they're planning to play him a wide receiver. Then Denzel Ward gets another concussion, so now they just say, okay, we got to play quarterback, right?
It's going to be a mess either way. I think that the thing to remember with him though is that he is the best wide receiver in this class, and so
by far, like.
I don't know about by far, but I think there's enough confusion about like Teteroa McMillan relative to the rest of like the higher end group that it's kind of Teteroa McMillan, if anything, has kind of come back to the pack a bit, and so Travis Hunter, if he were purely a wide receiver, would be I think pretty clearly by far the number one player in the class. Now the problem is that he's like such a good cornerback as well. So it's really you really just don't know exactly, and you're not going to know. And I know like a lot of rookie drafts happen right after the NFL draft. You might have an indication. Like I heard somebody on a podcast say that it'll be interesting what they announce him as when he's drafted, because that could be like because they have to, I guess, say a position.
Okay.
So like if they say wide receiver, then that's like, oh my God, he's a wide receiver, and his like draft stock could go crazy in fantasy. But I think I mean, the comp that I hear for him as a wide receiver is like Garrett Wilson type.
Ooh.
So like really good, solid, if not maybe not A tier or S tier, but like the tier below the really elite guys type wide receiver in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, I think he's worth investing. Maybe not a top 5 fantasy rookie draft pick in, but I would say if you get down to you're starting to go to like 6, 7, 8, and if you're in a super flex, Cam Ward's off the board. He would probably go after like 3 receivers and Teteroa McMillan. I would start really three
running backs. I mean, right?
3 running backs and Teteroa McMillan. I would really start thinking about him like 7-ish in rookie drafts, because he's got the upside to be the number 1 fantasy contributor in this entire class.
Wow. Okay. I guess we'll stick on wide receiver, right? So everyone said kind of down year because the last couple of years have just been so great too, right? We're just getting super studs.
We're really hurt. Like last year's class was unbelievable. I mean, like Lad McConkey's a 2nd round pick, and now he's like a top 15 dynasty wide receiver. And he's like not even anywhere near the most talented guy in that class. Like it's insane. Neighbors and Thomas are absolute studs. Marvin Harrison's probably going to be fine. And
Jalen McMillian, Rome Odunze,
it's
Coleman, and
it's insane.
Xavier Worthy. Would all these guys be the first wide receiver off the board?
I don't think it's that extreme this year, because I think Teteroa McMillan is an interesting. He's a polarizing prospect. Like a lot of the sort of big board guys have him in like the top 5 on big boards, and then a lot of guys have him in like the 15 range, 15, 20, depending on, what kind of evaluation that they have on him. So he's a bit polarizing because he's big, and big wide receivers like that don't always. They can have a lot of fantasy variance as well as they don't. Like you think about who like the number one guys are in fantasy. Jefferson, Chase. Those guys aren't giant like possession or not possession contested catch type guys. Like they're all over the field dynamic type guys. And McMillan I think is a bit controversial because he doesn't have that in his game necessarily.
Sorry,
But
McMillan?
yeah,
Tedoro?
McMillan.
Who's
Yeah,
McMillan?
Tetaroa
Oh,
McMillan.
Tedoro. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, he doesn't have like he's like Drake London is the comp that comes up for him a lot, just because of like he's the big play, big size guy. T Higgins, Cortland Sutton, like those types of guys, and so that's kind of those three guys, which I think are the ones I see the most for him. That's a spectrum of guys. Like it's not none of those guys are top five wide receiver. Like Drake London is like maybe the best comp. Like the season Drake London just had is probably the best comp. T Higgins is a really good wide receiver who just had a really good season, but is like a number two. And I don't think there's not a ton of number one spots for Tetaroa. Like the Panthers are an interesting one potentially, but I don't know. You wouldn't be like thrilled to get a guy in the Panthers offense probably. The Saints are interesting. Like Olave is there, but Olave, there's a lot of like question about Olave, but even then that quarterback situation isn't great.
Because yeah, fit is so important, right? So
Yeah.
what's best case for him? Like what's it? Because he's going what, top 15?
Yeah, so I think the best case, and I feel this way for Ashton Jeanty as well, is the best case is whichever one of those guys get drafted by the Raiders, because the Raiders have fixed their quarterback situation. Geno Smith is like a really good fantasy supporting quarterback compared to they had literally the worst possible situation you could imagine last year, and also they threw all of it to Bowers, but so Tetaroa to the Raiders, I think, would be an amazing situation. I think Gene T is probably more likely to go at that spot, though. So then you look at like the Patriots at 4. Unlikely. I think they probably will draft like an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman at that spot. But if you would go to the Patriots, you'd have to trust yourself on Patriots wide receivers, which is not easy to do. But he would have the young, really talented passer in Drake May, and he wouldn't have that much competition for, any sort of targets in that Patriots, wide receiver and skill position group.
Okay,
So
so let's just go. We got to cover other guys. So Matthew Golden, right? He's the next
yeah,
guy up. He's the speed guy. In my head, I always worry about this just pure speed guys. Who's the guy the Bengals took? Who's like the fastest guy ever?
yeah, John Ross.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember. I loved him, and he never
yeah,
did anything. Right? So is there
yeah.
boom or
So
bust with him?
yeah, Golden's interesting because he doesn't have like a great production track record, and so he's really shot up because of how fast he ran.
Speed
Um,
kills.
Yeah, it does, and he's going to go in the first round most likely now. That was not a given until the combine. The one you keep hearing for him as like a high end spot would be Dallas,
Ooh.
which I think would be great for him because I don't think he really has like the alpha one upside, but with CeeDee Lamb and in that offense that loves to. Dak, when Dak is healthy, really supports a lot of options in the passing game. I think that'd be a great spot for him. He's an interesting one, though. You're going to have to really. He's going to get better NFL draft capital than you would expect for a guy of his production in college. So you're gonna have to kind of take a leap of faith if you are going to have to pay for what is inevitably like a top 25 NFL draft pick that does not have the sort of production background that a lot of top 25 NFL wide receivers have.
Okay, and then we got Jaden Higgins. Is that who it is?
Higgins, I like a lot. He wouldn't be. I wouldn't say he'd be in the top 5, but he might be. He
Oh,
might
he's
be.
not.
He might be 6 for me. Yeah, I think the one that I really like for fantasy and that I think people need to like not overthink at all is Egbuka from Ohio State. Just a pure like the slot, like the guy that you would want in the slot as a fantasy guy. He's so prolific in college. he played alongside all of these absolute studs that you see all over the league now, with Olave, Garrett Wilson, JSN. He's pretty similar to JSN, honestly, from like a role standpoint. JSN's maybe a little higher upside, but Igbuka will go in the 20s to someone who needs a slot receiver, and that would just be, don't even think about it. He's so solid and will be so productive. That's the guy I think I would have him. Not knowing what Hunter's role is, I would have him number 2 wide receiver,
Wow.
just because I think he's so safe and he'll be so productive right away and going forward.
So what's his comp, like Godwin?
That's a good one, yeah. JSN, because he played at Ohio State too, and plays the slot. So that's kind of the one that like pops into my head. But just like your absolute like slot guy who will get a bunch of catches and will be regularly open and will succeed sort of regardless of how high octane the offense is or not. He's just super safe. And then
Where do you like him? I'm just looking here at the draft.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Chargers at 22.
Chargers, maybe not as much. Denver, potentially would be good. Like those teams in the early 20s that are looking at drafting skill guys because they have maybe like a young quarterback in place, like Denver, I think, is a spot where they need to upgrade at a couple of different places. So that would be potentially interesting. The Steelers, not as much anymore, although Pickens is maybe out there at the end of the year, so I could see Igbuka would be a really nice fit there if they can fix their quarterback.
Could they trade Pickens? What would this is a little
Pickens has 1 year left on his rookie deal.
Okay,
he's a second round pick. So
but they could trade him. Like, what would he go for in the draft? Would he be a first round pick?
I don't know. I think they would probably hold on to him and just let him walk. Like that's usually what they do
really?
with their guys. Yeah, they would just kind of like they'd be like, Pickens is Pickens. He gets into fights on the field all the time and
doesn't block.
He's amazing in that way. He's so funny and just crazy. But I think Mike Tomlin probably has a history of getting rid of knuckleheads. And if he kind of looks at Pickens like that, I'd say Igbuka at 21 to the Steelers would be great because he would just sort of seamlessly slot into the slot with DK for the next however they do.
Then Pickens and DK down, just doing like Madden, right?
Exactly, and it wouldn't overlap. You'd have the only thing is they've got to fix that offense. They could definitely not support 3 wide receivers next year if that was the case. But the other one, the wide receiver that I haven't mentioned that's really worth talking about is Luther Burden from Missouri. The high end comp that I see for him is DJ Moore. Which is interesting. I think though his floor, though, he's got gadget like capabilities where he's going to get a ton of manufactured touches wherever he goes. And so you're going to see like a lot of like explosive big plays early on. And he's the best, Travis Hunter excluded, obviously, but he is the number 1 sort of like high school prospect wide receiver in this group, like 5-star, pure 5-star. Stayed at Missouri last year, and Missouri's quarterback was not good, and they had a bunch of injuries, and so he did not get the kind of production that he did his sophomore year. But he is just a really dynamic playmaker that will get a bunch of manufactured touches and potentially has upside to be like a really high-end guy, but is absolutely worth a late first-round pick if he gets that far in your rookie drafts.
Is he more gadget, like kind of had like Debo? They use Deep, but he's like a physical gadget, or like Worthy, who's more like you get him running.
No, Debo, I think would be closer. Yeah, because he's not going to be like Worthy has really that downfield 50-yard bomb type speed. Burden is going to be much more like the kind of underneath dynamic type guy. So yeah, like Debo, DJ Moore kind of vibes there for both. And he's going to be either an early second round or late first round pick. So I think especially if he goes to a good team in that range, like he could, potentially go to the Bills or something like that, where it would be like they could use a guy that is a dynamic playmaker. And so like that kind of thing would be great for him. And he's absolutely worth a lot of attention.
Okay. All right. We got 30 minutes. I think we're pretty much going to spend the rest on running backs, right? Because that's So we got Ashton Giante. I was doing some research. I couldn't believe he had the second most rushing yards in the history of college.
Yeah, just Barry Sanders.
So it's like Jesus, but he's small, right? He's a
Yeah,
5'9". He's not even that fast. He's just the anomaly.
he's a monster though. Like I mean, he's his games last year were just must watch because he would just every game he would break like a 60, 70 yard run. It was insane. Um, LaDainian Tomlinson is a name that like comes up from him a lot in terms of like I mean he's okay. So think about it like this: he is arguably already the number one dynasty running back. He's it's it
Really?
he's in the tier with Bijan, Jameer Gibbs, that three. He's in that tier with them unquestionably already based on how he's being treated and he's the obvious 101. So like that's the value of the 101 right now is like you get a running back that at least for now, especially if you were to go to the Raiders who have like the most open running backfield in like the entire league. They had a bunch of jokers running back there last year. Like Alexander Madison was the number one running back they had, and it's just like
Yeah. So then Jim
absolute nobody.
McCormick. Yeah, it was
Yeah, and
rough.
they've got Pete Carroll now, who knows gonna want to run the ball, and if they pick him six, I mean that is just absolute to the moon. The other one is the Cowboys, who they put some investment into the free agency running back with Javante and Miles Sanders,
Yeah,
so
well,
they
that's
might.
gross.
Yeah, to me that might signal to me that they don't want to take Ashton Jeanty though, but I don't, and they might want to bring in a running back later in the draft, like a second round pick. That could make more sense to them. But they could still end up taking Ginty, and that would be incredible. But yeah, I mean, this guy, I mean, he is clear 101. He's like I said, you brought this up earlier, and it jumped out to me. I think he's already a first round pick in redraft. Like, I don't think we need to
Wow.
know what team he's on or like what the situation is. I think he's a first round pick already. Like,
But
unless he were to get drafted by the Eagles somehow, or
yeah,
or one of the teams like the Lions or the Falcons. But like as long as he doesn't go behind like a real stud like or the Ravens or something, I think he's already a first round pick in redraft. Like he's
wow.
that productive and hyped, and he's a no brainer for sure.
So what's the earliest he could go? Like, is there any way the Pats do something crazy? Because
No,
there's
I
no
think it's
four,
six. I think it's
six.
six to the Raiders. Yep.
Okay, what if they don't take him? How could he slide? Like, could he get to
Yeah,
20?
absolutely. I think he could get to 20, yeah. But the thing about getting to 20 is 20 and 22, and 21 to a certain extent as well. We talked about the Steelers so much, but those three teams at 20, 21, and 22, the Broncos, the Steelers, and the Chargers are like the prime running back spots. Like with the exception of the Raiders, who obviously they're very bad. And then the other spot for Gene T in particular, I don't think they would take any other running back, but Gene T would be the Bears at 10 because the Bears, DeAndre Swift, God love him, but he's probably not long for the world there, especially after Ben Johnson got rid of him in Detroit. So
Yeah, yeah.
um, that would be the spot that I don't think any other running back could go, but he might go 10. The Cowboys at 12, and then that 20, 21, 22 pocket with the Chargers and the Broncos, who are the two most wide. Well, Chargers signed Najee, but it's a 1 year deal, and Jim Harbaugh is the most running back friendly coach we probably have. And then the Broncos wide open, dying to take a running back in that spot. They have what's his face, Audric Estime
Yeah,
and
Jaleel McLaughlin.
Leo McLaughlin and like Tyler Beatty. They have nothing there, and so that's like a wide open spot. But I don't think JT will go to 20. I think one of these other running backs will go at 20.
Okay, so last thing for Genty is there any way, like you said, first round pick, top five? Like, what's the best case scenario? What's the team with the best O line and
I think it's the Raiders because
It is
the
Raiders. Okay.
the Raiders have Brock Bowers and they have nobody else, and they have Pete Carroll who's going to want to run the ball, and they have Geno Smith, so now they have a quarterback, and it's not like the Aiden O'Connell show there anymore. I think it's the Raiders because the sixth overall pick is insane running back draft capital, and him and Bowers will essentially be that offense. And it'll go through them, and I think that's easily the best spot just because the volume is infinite there, and it'll be surely prioritized.
Okay. And then so then we got the two Ohio State running backs, right?
Yes. Yeah. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, they're different type of players. Travion Henderson is like really, really explosive, dynamic home run hitter. If you watch the playoffs, he had a couple of just monster runs, and that's kind of his vibe. He's much higher upside, I think. Quinshon Judkins was helped a ton by his combine. He tested really well, as there was some maybe concern about him being more of like a touchdown scorer. Like, I don't want to say like a power back because that makes me say that he's slow.
Keep going. My monitor's
Yeah, no, all good. The There was some fear that Quinshon Judkins was kind of more of a limited player, but his testing was great, and so he seems like a three down back, and potentially interesting as like a guy that gets a ton of his value from scoring touchdowns. That's like a real potential upside for him. But Henderson, I think, is likely to go higher, and likely to be more of a fantasy contributor because he's going to be one of those guys that only needs like 15 touches to be a running back one on the week because of how dynamic he is. He'll get a lot of passes, and that'll obviously boost his value. But yeah, it's Henderson and Judkins. I have them 3 and 4 in the group, because the one that I like slightly more is Omarion Hampton, from North Carolina. He just insane combine for him because he's a much bigger guy and was able to just like put together just crazy athletic numbers at the size he is. And so he's a guy. The comp that gets thrown around for Omarion Hampton is Joe Mixon, which doesn't sound like unbelievably
yeah.
sexy
Yeah.
because of how Joe Mixon is now. But
He had a
like,
great year last year.
oh, absolutely, and that was a big comeback for him, I would say. But when you're saying Joe Mixon, you're talking about a guy who has regularly been like a top 5 to 15 running back basically every year since he's been in the league, and like that's the kind of thing with Hampton. I would love for Hampton to go to Denver. I think that's like the perfect spot for him. Um, but we'll see what ends up happening there. I don't think the Cowboys would take him at 12. That's another one that pops up a bunch. And so, but Hampton going in that 2021-22 pocket, I think is that we talked about the last time would be perfect for him, and something we might see. I think we're going to see a bunch of running backs in like the top 40, 50 picks, which is super not normal. Like last year, not even close to that. I think we'll probably have at least 3 first round running backs, but there will be demand for Judkins and Caleb Johnson from Iowa, who's really compelling. And then there's kind of a teardrop after that. But yeah, I think it's a really dynamic group, and potential to have like 10 to 12 starters
That's
um,
crazy.
in this group. Yeah, there's like every flavor of running back that you would want like in this group. It's crazy. Like there's this kid from Virginia Tech. Um, his name is Basil Tootin. It's the weirdest spelled name you'll ever see. It's kind of pronounced Basil, but it's spelled with like an H and a Y, and it's crazy looking. But it he is a testing monster, and so he could be like an Austin Eckler type of like smaller explosive guy who just is like a dynamic playmaker, and he's like this like the 9th or 10th running back in the group. Like it's crazy how much there is from a running back perspective.
So how's this going to affect redraft leagues? Like, it was such a deep class, and with running, there's so many running backs. Like, are you looking like, is it going to be front loaded? Like, okay, this first 4 rounds of fantasy drafts, how many like rookie running backs do you think are going to go?
Yeah. So I think it's actually going to be a really interesting sort of inverse opportunity than you might expect, because I think that so many of the veteran running backs were good last year that the price of these guys is going to be suppressed. Like, the rookie hotness has been a rocket ship for these guys in redraft in recent years. Like we just had like Malik Neighbors was the highest drafted rookie wide receiver of all time, and he wasn't even the highest drafted rookie wide receiver in the rookie wide receiver class because Marvin Harrison was higher.
Sure.
And Saquon, when he came out, even was a first round pick. Gene T is absolutely going to be one of those guys, like we said. But the rest of the group, I think, might actually not be that inflated just because so many of the guys, like Mixon, a great example we just talked about, Henry, Saquon, obviously, but so many of those veteran running backs were good last year that I think it actually might be smarter to target rookie running backs that are probably better and fresher players than a lot of sort of the medium tier of veteran running backs, and especially in Dynasty. I mean, that's going to be
Sure, of course.
insane. Like the turnover from where we sit at the end of last season to where we're going to be at the end of next season in terms of the sheer up down of rookies that have joined the league and the veterans are going to slide. I think of a guy like Ramondre Stevenson who is like somehow like clinging on to life. Like veterans like that who are just not good really. Like they're in a good situation, but they're not like dynamic talents. This wide receiver or this running back class is going to smoke those guys. Like they're just going to be donezo, and then they're not going to have any sort of contract capital, and they're going to lose their jobs. The bottom tier of the veteran starters.
So help me out. So what's the line? So like Rico Dowdle, right? Just who had a good year, now he's on Carolina, or splitting time with Chuba, or even both those guys. Do you think will they go before? Who's your favorite second running back? Amario, the UNC guy.
Yeah,
He's your second favorite.
yeah, he's my second favorite in the draft. Henderson would be close third though.
Okay, so who are they going before? Like the Dowdle, Chuba, or would depend on fit?
Obviously depends on where they go, but yeah, I would say Chuba's different, right? A little bit because Chuba had a really good year when he was healthy.
Great year.
So Chuba, I would say probably maybe a little higher. But if we've got like, I'm trying to think what the great example of. So like last year had the Javonte Williams type, like that type of job, like that obviously isn't carrying over into 20. But I would say the Cowboys will likely draft one of these guys, and they have like Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders there, and one of these guys it will be better than Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. Like it's like those kind of jobs are just they're not going to be like if the Patriots were to draft one of these guys where they have Ramondre, like I said, and Antonio Gibson, like one of these guys would come in and disrupt that. The Steelers are wide open right now because they had Najee and Jalen Warren last year. They don't have Najee anymore, so it's Jalen Warren and this guy is better than Jalen Warren. Like whoever they plug into that is going to succeed. So yeah, I mean there's like a bunch of instant impact in this running back class. There's a bunch of great sort of complement fits into committee backfields in this class. It's got everything at running back, and it's really exciting because last year all these veterans got big contracts because the NFL looked at the draft and were like, there's nobody here for us to like slide in. And it's the opposite this year. Obviously, there wasn't a great free agency class either. Like Najee Harris was number one by far, and then it was just kind of like after that, like Aaron Jones re-signed with the Vikings. Like it was like that kind of vibe. But this running back class is going to just blow them out of the water. And there's like legit like 15 guys, like Sampson from Tennessee. Dylan Sampson's really interesting. I see him mocked to the Chiefs a lot as a guy that could take Pacheco's job pretty eminently. It's like those kind of guys like a Pacheco who had the injury problem.
That's a perfect one, yeah.
Yeah, had the injury problem, looked really bad when he came back. Kareem Hunt was like the number one guy in the playoffs, even though Pacheco was like the more dynamic starter who was like a second round pick in redraft last year before he got injured. That kind of guy is just is dust with if they bring in like one of these really good dynamic young runners.
Well, he's great too because he was like a 7th round pick, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
well, he's the same vibe, absolutely.
Yeah, where like Bucky Irving, right? He's probably where was he? Was he a 3rd round pick?
Yeah, or 4th. I don't remember which.
Yeah,
but definitely
right. He was one of the best running backs in the league, certainly the second half of the season. So it's like you can take these lottery picks with your a 6th round running back in real NFL and take him in the 12th round of your fantasy draft and get RB1 value, right? So it's just it's crazy.
You want to talk an interesting one on this topic is Kyron Williams. I would be fascinated. Blake Corum just was not very good as a rookie. He was okay. If they were bringing another guy in there, that would be like, ooh, Kyron Williams. I don't know because like Kyron Williams just he kept it together. He was like everyone
Usage
was like, "Oh,
monster
Blake
too.
Corum's gonna disrupt him,"
Yeah.
and he just scored a touchdown every game basically, and he was a machine. But the second like they get somebody else in there, and if they were to go with one of these like a second round pick on one of these really dynamic guys, that would be another one where I would just really. There's the upside on the top five guys here is huge, and like there's 10 to 15 more guys who could have impact either long term or immediate.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna wrap up shortly. We're gonna wrap up in a minute here. So give me a prediction on how the skill guys go. So we got Cam Ward first, Hunter
Yeah.
second, and then who? Let's go to 10. First 10 skill guys.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say Gene T is probably higher than Tedero McMillan, but it could go either way. They're kind of a tier, I would say. So they would be 3 and 4. Shadur, I mean, I don't even know what to say about Shadur. He might go to the Saints now because of Carr's injury that popped up today. So he could be in the tier or he could be sort of in that 20. Like if he falls, I think the Steelers will take him if he's there. So he'd be in the early 20s. Matthew Golden, I see to Dallas a lot. So Matthew Golden might be like sixth on average, but he could also like not even go in the first round potentially, but or like fall to one of like the good teams at the back of the draft. Um, Travion Henderson's a first round pick for sure, I think. So he's in that.
Really? He's going first round, even
I
though
think he will go in the 20s. Yeah. I think he's like a home run hitter that is just a super dynamic. He's not as good as Jameer Gibbs or as fast as Jameer Gibbs, but
who
it's
is?
right. But it's that kind of player. Like it and he's got the sort of lesser upside version of that. I would say so I think he'll go in the first round. Um Burden will be close. Agbuka, I feel really good about going in the 20s. Burden might go in the 30s, so he could be slightly outside of the first round. And then the Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Johnson would kind of round out that group. My sort of 4 and 5 running back that would go right there. I think there's about 4 or 5 wide receivers that will go in the first round, depending on what you think about Travis Hunter. There's about 3 running backs and then a couple early second round running backs, 2 quarterbacks. And then we didn't talk about tight ends, but Tyler Warren will probably go in the top 10, I would say. So he would be in like the Gene T and Tedero McMillan, most likely tier off the board. And then Colston Loveland will also go in the first round from Michigan. He's more of a pure wide receiver type tight end. And he will go in the teens of the 20s. And then the rest of the tight ends won't go until mid second. So those are the 2 that will be in the first round for sure. So it's about, I would say, roughly like 12 skill players going in the real NFL first round, give or take a few. And then there's guys like Dart who might sneak in late.
We've seen
Um,
with QBs, right? They just
yeah,
move up, right? Penix last
exactly.
year, nobody had him going to the Falcons. Bo
Yeah.
Nix went crazy early, so
You
I
called out
think we could
Higgins
see this.
from Iowa State, the wide receiver. I really think he's really good. And if a bunch of wide receivers go in the teens, like if Tetaroa goes in the top 10, Golden goes in the early teens, and obviously then Hunter's off the board, and then like those teams take Igbuka and Burden in the early 20s, I could see Higgins maybe sneaking into the first round. So it's a great group at the top, and then there's so many like running backs and like dart throws, but it's a little lacking in elite players, I would say, and that's the big difference from last year where you really have like 3 or 4 super elite dynasty quarterback assets from last year. You have 4 to 6 like really good wide receiver assets, and then this group is more kind of your wide receiver 2s and your quarterback 2s, and then Gene T, Hampton and maybe one of the Ohio State guys are like really above it. Hunter's capping his upside because he's not playing wide receiver, and the tight ends are good, but not
No
deep.
Brock Bowers.
Yeah, no Brock Bowers. So it's a good group of kind of good players, but maybe only one great player.
Okay, man, Patrick, you know what you're talking about. So I'd say let's come on after the draft next
Yeah.
week, and then let's just break it down again. Because I feel like you'd still go for another 2 hours.
Yeah, you know what?
In the
These
chamber.
landing spots are going to be so fascinating. There's going to be so much to talk about because these guys are really dynamic, and especially the running backs. I mean, there are going to be 10 to 12 backfields that are just like totally different as we head in to the year next year. So I'm excited for that in particular.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. Fantasy NFL Today show. Check us our Discord. We're on Twitter. We're going to be blurbing the draft, and then we're going to come back on next week after the actual draft and then see what's up. All right, Patrick, man, this has been great. I got to fix my monitor so I can end the podcast.
Thanks, John.
All right, I figured it out. 1 second. My computer. Oh. No, that's not good. My computer restarted. Hope the podcast. Oh no. All right, 1 second. We got to see end recording. Okay, good. I think we're good.